I'm Sonya Morton-Firth, and you're tuned in to the Sonya Morton-Firth Show. Today, my guest is Dr. John Demartini, renowned human behaviour expert, philosopher, and author of over 40 books. Tune in as we discuss why we are here, how to empower your life, and AI and the future of humanity. Dr. John Demartini, welcome back to my show. It is so lovely to have you on again.
Thank you for having me again. I think we did the last one live. This one we're doing it from Zoom this time.
And it's just not the same. It is still lovely having you, but I would have loved to be sitting opposite you and having this chat face to face, but definitely next time. Do you know it's been 4 years ago since we last had a conversation?
I know, time flies, doesn't it? It's amazing.
I can't believe it. And for anyone that's listening now, and if you haven't gone back and seen the one that we did 4 years ago, please go back, take a listen. We delve deep into John's life and how he got to where he got to today. But we're gonna go straight in, and I'd really like to go in with a big question, John. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Why are we here?
Why are we here as a human being?
As a human being, why is humanity here?
Well, first I'll start on an individual specific basis. Each individual creates a purpose or meaning, a telos, as Aristotle called it, based on the voids that they experience in their life. Now, let's imagine you meet somebody on the street and you put them on a pedestal and you minimize yourself to them and you exaggerate them and you think that they're more successful or they're more intelligent or they're more financially viable or they're more stable in relationships or more, socially savvy or more physically fit or more spiritually aware. And we exaggerate them and we minimize ourselves in comparison by the law of contrast. When we do, we're too humble to admit what we see in them inside ourselves. And because the way value structures work in society, whoever has the most power, and we give them power, we tend to inject their values into our life and cloud the clarity of our own calling, our own real mission in life. So that void, that emptiness, because we disempower ourselves, because we're too humble to admit what we see in them is inside us, is an emptiness that wants fulfillment. And that emptiness drives us to try to find fulfillment. And that's what gives us our direction and meaning in life. Now, if we also meet somebody on the street we think is an idiot, we think is a failure, we think is impoverished, we think is an idiot in relationships, not socially savvy, physically yucky, and uninspired, we look down on them, and now we're too proud to admit what we see in them inside us. And we disown the parts that they represent inside us. Because there's an old proverb in the New Testament that says that beware of judging others, for you do the same thing. The truth is, whatever we're too proud or too humble to admit that we see in others is inside us. We don't acknowledge it. And they're there to bring into our awareness the part we're denying and disowning. And that disownment is a void of emptiness that drives us to try to find fulfillment. So we keep attracting people in our life to help us face that part of ourselves and to eventually own it. And so that individual path and meaning or purpose in life is a culmination of those voids, of all those judgments, trying to find solutions so we can transcend the judgments into love. So each of us have an individual purpose and meaning for our existence in the existential world. Now the question is what is all of that leading to on a collective level? Well, Plato, when he was asked that question, he said, for the sake of love, but not romantic love, but a more transcendent love, which is a synthesis of all opposites in life. As Heraclitus said, his predecessor, and Empedocles said the same thing, that love was the synthesis of all opposites. Parmenides said the same thing. So I believe that every time we judge something and we disown parts, if we infatuate with something, we resent its opposite, and that's both sides of disownment. They're trying to bring those pairs of opposites back together so we can integrate them and feel love and fulfillment. And so collectively, I think that the purpose of the humanity experience is to transcend our judgments that are incomplete awarenesses into having full conscious awareness and to realize that there's nothing but love, all else was illusion.
Wow, well, that was a good start to the show, wasn't it? um, going back over what you said, because there is a lot there to unpack, and I guess you mentioned, or you talked about the voids that we all have, and that's how we then, by looking at these voids, we can then discover a little bit more about ourselves and our purpose. Are we born with these voids? Is that, or is it, are these things that have consequently we've come across through our lives?
Well, science in neuroscience has revealed, and epigenetics has revealed, that we have multi-generational epigenetic tags from up to 14 or more generations back. So anything that was a void and a judgment that occurred multiple generations back is left in the gene code and can carry on epigenetic tags into the next generation, next generation. So we have epigenetic tags that leave us with impulses and instincts to seek and avoid because of these perceptions. And then we, during gestation, during the 9 months of gestation, we also accumulate more of them because we're picking this up as a living organism. And we can see this in ultrasounds. Even during gestation, we can see the child responding with seeking and avoiding responses. And then once we're born, from the time we're born, we're epigenetically coding. See, every time we infatuate with somebody, we get a parasympathetic response and we acetylate and tag our DNA and histones, and we restore and remember in our subconscious mind and our genes those misperceptions, those imbalanced perceptions. Because when we're infatuated with somebody, we're not seeing the downsides. When we resent somebody, we activate the sympathetic side. We get now a methylation epigenetically, coding the DNA and the histones. And so these are stored to let us know whatever we haven't loved, whatever we haven't balanced, whatever we have a void on, is stored in our amygdala and hippocampus and is stored in our genes to make sure we leave nothing unloved along our journey. And it's guiding our pathway and our purpose. Our purpose is the most efficient and effective pathway to fulfill the greatest amount of voids with the greatest amount of value and love. That's why we do what we love, and love what we do is important to maximize our wellness quotient and our fulfillment quotient.
So, as I understand it, there you're talking about past traumas or past lives, in terms of the epigenetic code. So we're born already
Codes.
with past lives, past trauma, that we need to sort of, I guess, discover what those are before we can discover our purpose, or that will come out in discovering our purpose.
Well, it's not so much our past lives, but it is in our heritage. So we're somehow inheriting the epigenetic codes. This is called multi-generational epigenetic coding. And we carry that forward, and it does influence, because if your father was stressed about something, it can influence you to have an instinct to avoid whatever he was stressed by. And you will wonder, where am I getting that? And that's coming. And it's not something to blame somebody, it's something to be aware of, because it's necessary for your journey. It's not a bad thing or a good thing, it's just necessary for you to have your unique hierarchy of values and direction in life that makes up your purpose. And your purpose is the pathway that maximizes the integration and dissolving of those particular tags, those epigenetic tags. The epigenetic tags are letting you know wherever you had an impulse to seek or an instinct to avoid something, which is an amygdala response of survival. And the moment you integrate them and balance them, you go on to not survival, but to thrival. So if you stay with those tags, you're in survival. If you transcend them and integrate them, you go into thrival. You fulfill your life.
You have a lot of people there that become are sort of victims of their past, and it's because this happened to me, because that happened to me, because my mother went through that because my father went through that. Now, I've done your program, and I know that dissolving all of those things and actually being grateful for those lessons and understanding that can just set you on your way, and you realize how amazing, and you feel very grateful for those things. But how do we dissolve? How do we easily dissolve? No, not easily. Is it an easy thing, or do we just keep coming back? People talk about we keep coming back to learn the lessons.
Well, I think it's easy relative to going through life without dissolving. It's only a matter of hours of work compared to years of craziness. Can I share a story? I had a gentleman who was in Sydney, Australia, and he was 58 years old. And he came and attended the program, the Breakthrough Experience, which I've done 1,205 times. And he comes there, and I asked, everybody in the room, I said, pick somebody that you have the biggest resentment to, the biggest charge on, the biggest avoidance, the biggest alienation to. And he didn't have a problem picking his father. When his father and him, when he was 16, him and his father had a fist fight blowout. And his father and him literally went at it with cuffs, and I mean, just really went for it. And his father told him to get out of the house and never come back. So this was 42 years later. He's 58 now, 16 to 58. He has not talked to nor seen his father for 42 years. And I told him, I said, all right, so let's identify what specific trait, action, or inaction, what behavior did your father display or demonstrate that you despise, dislike, or hate most? Well, he was aggressive. He was, forcing me to do something, and he listed them down. And I said, now go to a moment where and when you perceive yourself displaying or demonstrating that same behavior, that same trait, action, or inaction. I swear I would never do that. I made it I pride myself in never being that way. And I said, yeah, that's all the BS. That's the facade that you do to protect yourself with your amygdala. But let's be honest and let's go. And finally, he humbled himself. He says, okay, I've done the same thing to my son. I've done this to people in my employees. I've been really aggressive to people that pretended to try to get something and take advantage of me. And he says, and I've done it with some of the girlfriends I had during my teenage years. And I had some fist fights with some people. And he started to go through it. And all of a sudden, he realized that the quantity and quality of him doing it was equal to his father. But he didn't want to face that. He denied that. He didn't want to look at his finger that are three point back. So when he finally owned that, it softened a bit of a judgment. Then I asked him, now go to a moment where and when you perceive your father displaying or demonstrating this behavior that you despised. And in that moment, how did it serve you and benefit you? Well, it didn't. It didn't serve me. No, I didn't ask that. I asked, how did it serve? There's always two sides to it. I can't see it. I don't know. I know that's your persona trying to protect yourself. Go back in there and look at how it served you. And he realized, I became an entrepreneur. I didn't rely on somebody else. I worked for myself. I swear I would never have an authority figure running my life. I became driven. I wanted to make sure I could stand on my own 2 feet. I made the shot, called the shots. And he started writing down the benefits of this, and he never saw the causal relationship between that event and how he became. He thought he got successful in spite of his father instead of because of his father too. Not that his father's the only factor, but it's a factor. So I kept going through these questions. Now go to a moment where and when you did this behavior, to who you did it to, and how did it benefit them? Because as long as he's carrying around shame and guilt about doing it himself, he's going to be hating people that remind him of his father, because it's reminding him of what he's feeling ashamed of. Because we only resent people on the outside that represent parts of us that we're ashamed of on the inside. And that's why we dissociate and go into pride to protect ourselves from facing it. Then I went in there and asked him, where was this father very kind and gentle? And he found times in his early childhood that his father was there for him, listened to him, kind, gentle. Whenever he did things that supported his father's value, his father was a pussycat. Whenever he did things that challenged his father's values, he became a tiger, like we all do. And then I went in there and asked him, at the exact moment when his father was aggressive to, who is the one that was overprotecting him? He said, definitely my mom, definitely my brother, and definitely one of the coaches at school who was, was saying, if you want me, I'll beat your father up because he can't touch you because you're important in school here. And he saw that these were balanced. And then I went to the last column of the questions, and I said, if your father at that moment when he was aggressive to you and you had that fist fight, if he had been supportive and protective of you, what would have been the drawback? He said, it wouldn't be a drawback. I'd be happy. I said, no, that's a fantasy. You're comparing your current reality to a fantasy. That's why you're angry and depressed. I said, what would have been the drawback? And then I asked him, I said, did you have a brother or sister? He said, yeah, I had a brother. Did your father treat your brother the way he treated you? No. He was kind and nice and supportive and protective of the brother. I said, so what you're saying is your brother got the treatment you wanted. He said, yeah. I said, so would you trade places with your brother today? And he goes, oh, God, no. I said, why? He said, because my father overprotected my brother. My brother's never really done anything with his life. He's sitting there waiting for my dad to die. So he has a little bit of an inheritance and he hasn't really done anything innovative or creative in his life. He's kind of stuck. I said, so what you said is you all these years wished your father would have been like that to you. He said, I did until I just woke up, and he started crying. And he said, I had no idea what that father did for me. And I said, your father believed in you. He didn't believe in the brother. That's why he protected the brother. He believed in you. He knew you could handle things. And he started crying and he just opened up. And then I said, who here in the room reminds you of your father? He picked this guy about his father's age and went over there, and he sat there and held hands with this guy and opened up his heart to his father. And that was on Saturday night. On Wednesday, he flew to where his father was. He called his father that night and on Saturday night and said, I'd like to come see you. And his father was warm and open. He says, he's 82 years old. He said, I would love to hear all about your life. That would mean everything to me to see you, son. So he goes and sees his father on a Wednesday, opens his heart to his father, says the same thing to his father that he said to the guy in the surrogate in the chair the night, Saturday night, the breakthrough. His father said almost identical words back. They were in tears. They had this amazing day on Thursday. And Thursday night, he flew back to Australia. His father died on Friday. And the next time I saw him, he came to the breakthrough experience and he said to me, gave me this huge hug. He's a big guy. He says, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to make sure that I got truthful with myself about how much I loved my dad before he died. I really believe that he was waiting for that and he didn't want to die until he had love from his son. I'm so grateful I got to do that before he died. I realized that he was my hero and I didn't even comprehend it until that day I was in breakthrough. So I'm a firm believer it has nothing to do what happens to it. It has everything to do with your perception, decisions, and actions as a result of it. And if you ask quality questions, you can liberate yourself from misinterpretations of your reality and see life on the way instead of in the way and be grateful for it. Anything you can't say thank you for is baggage. Anything you can say thank you for becomes fuel.
Let's talk about those quality questions. Sorry, I was just taken back then when I did the breakthrough experience, and you changed my life, John, and I did exactly the same. It was my father that I worked on. I don't know if you remember this, but I picked you to someone that reminded me of my father, and you said some words to me then that were very poignant, and that has changed the relationship I have with my father and how I see him. And that was oh, that was more than 4 years ago now. That was like 6 years ago. Um, I think what it taught me most is gratitude. And if you can feel truly grateful, and I don't just mean when people say, oh yes, thank you for this, thank you for that, because there's one thing just saying thank you, but there's one thing being truly grateful from the bottom of your heart. And I remember actually crying with gratitude, having tears of gratitude. And I sometimes do now in life, just if I'm thinking of something, or if I've had an aha moment or something's come for me, I'm like, oh, I have that sort of moment of feeling gratitude. Is that what we're here to feel? That
That's it. Those are the confirmations of authenticity.
But getting to that point, and I'm going back to what I said earlier, it's not easy. And each time you think you're there, nearly something whacks you in the face to remind you.
Well, many people confuse elation and mania with that state, but it's not. It's a poised, present, purposeful, powerful, prioritized, and patient state. What's interesting is at night, we have delta waves in our brain, around 3 cycles per second. During the day, we have beta waves in our brain, about 13 cycles per second. During the day, our sympathetic nervous system is active. At night, our parasympathetic nervous system is active. When those are in perfect balance and perfect sync, we get alpha theta waves around 8 cycles per second. When we get 8 cycles per second exactly in a sync, we get a gamma synchronicity in the brain. The forebrain and parietal regions all of a sudden synchronize brain function. And when they do, you get a eureka moment, aha moment, and tears of gratitude because the autonomics are perfectly balanced. So whenever we're infatuous with somebody, we go into parasympathetic. Whenever we resent somebody, we go into sympathetic. Whenever we love somebody, we go into that authentic state. And it's a confirmation of authenticity. It's a confirmation that we're loving and not judging them in that moment. And it's trying to let us know this is fulfillment. Love is its own reward. This is the moment of fulfillment. We have that aha, and we see the hidden order in the chaos. Stephen Wolfram said that most of us have entropy and disorder because we have computational boundaries. We don't realize things, that we have missing information in our awareness. So if we're infatuated, we're blind to the downside. If we're resentful, we're blind to the upsides. And when we love, we're not blind. We see both sides. Even though the adage, love is blind, no, that's not true. Infatuation confused with love is blind. And that's what people have confused. And they're addicted with their dopamine and their amygdala, this dopamine high, this infatuation, manic state, and blind to the downsides, and confusing that with the magnificent profoundness and fulfillment of love. And love is its own reward, and love is the confirmation that we're living purposely and we're authentic and we're actually in sustainable fair exchange with people. Because when we're narcissistically proud and too big for other people, we want something for nothing. When we're minimizing, we want to give something for nothing. When we have love, we have sustainable fair exchange, which is what keeps relationships and rings on fingers.
And that part is the balance, right? That's the balance part of things. Yeah, even getting to that stage usually, and you start off with the infatuation stage, and 3 months in you end up hating them and wanting to kill them. So but it is striking that sort of that middle ground, that balance. But that doesn't just go for love relationships. Doesn't that also go
Business, business,
business?
social, every area of your life confirms when you're authentic with fulfillment. If you're in business and you exaggerate yourself and don't meet the customer's needs or the employee's needs, the customer withdraws, and the employees get unions to counterbalance you to bring you back. And if you're in relationship, if you're cocky and telling them what to do, you have futility. Anybody that's tried to get their spouse to be like the way they want them automatically finds out it's futile. So that you got to learn to love them for who they are, and they'll turn into who you love. So anytime you get back into balance, your brain has got less noise in it, static. Your business is more flourishing. Your finances are more stable. That's why Warren Buffett says, until you can manage emotions, don't expect to manage money. Your relationships are more fair exchange and a match. It's what people want. They want a banter, not superior inferiority. Your social leadership skills are respected. Your health and well-being is stabilizes, and you're inspired by your life because you get the eureka moments. So the universe gives you feedback. Your physiology, psychology, sociology, and universe gives you feedback, your business feedback, to guide you to authenticity. And
Let's
that's why everything's on the way, not in the way.
And I love that expression. Let's just delve down into that expression. That's been one of your key phrases. Everything is always on the way and not in the way. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, the thing is when you are infatuated with somebody and you're too humble to admit what you see in them is inside you, they're there to bring in. The reason why you admire them is because you have what you see in them, but aren't honoring the form it is, because you're exaggerating how important their form is according to their values instead of honoring your form and your values. But you're not missing it. I've had people come in and say, well, what do you admire about that person? Well, their tenacity or their persistence or something. I said, where do you do that? I don't have it. I procrastinate. No, no, no. Where do you have persistence? And they find out in their highest value, they persist, but in lower values, they don't. But if they compare themselves to other people and they look at where they have the persistence, they don't have persistence in that area, but they have it in another area. Once they realize they have it in their own area, they honor it, and then they take this person off the pedestal and level the playing field. And the moment you level the playing field, you get to play in the same field of opportunity that the person you admire does. You're not sitting in their shoulders. You're not sitting in their shadows. You're now getting to stand on their shoulders.
Let's talk about one of your favorite topics, purpose, John. You have an amazing way of really drilling down into how to find people's purpose. And one of the reasons I came on your breakthrough a few years ago was I'd spent years trying to figure it out, going on all sorts of different courses, reading all sorts of different things, and still not really figuring out what my purpose was. Um, how do you help people find their purposes? Are there any quick steps that you can let my audience know that they could potentially do today?
Yeah, I had fun just this last week here in London. A man tried to pretend I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. My certainty exceeds his doubt. I said, yes, you do, and I'll show you. So I said, what do you do every single day that nobody has to remind you to do that you can't wait to get up and do and you love doing? He says, I don't know. I said, I didn't ask that. And you answered that in less than a half a second, not a tenth of a second of me asking, which means you didn't even look. So quit running the story and answer the question. And we finally found out that in his case, he spends 2 to 5 hours a day reading in personal development. And I said, how long have you been doing that? He says, 25 years. I said, so really? And he was sitting there and his facial expressions, I don't know. And he was, it was incongruent. And then when I asked him right there on that spot, if you could go and make a living helping people in that arena, would you love to do that? Of course, yes, I would. I said, you know what you want to do, but you've got a bunch of fear stopping you. You have the fear of not knowing enough because you're comparing yourself to somebody else you think is farther along on the journey, and you think, I don't have that, so I can't do it. But at the same time, 25 years of studying 2 to 5 hours a day is a vast amount of knowledge, and there's a lot of people that could benefit from your service. But you're comparing yourself to myself and other people that have been farther along the journey, and you're thinking, oh my God, I don't have that, so I can't do. I'm immobilized by my minimization of myself. So I'll lie to myself because I don't want to take and confront that fear, even though I know inside what I want to do. So then I said, and then the next fear is the fear of failure at it, not succeeding at it. And that's because you're comparing yourself to somebody that you think is more successful in that field. And anytime you envy them and try to imitate them, you end up, ignorance and suicide. You don't go anywhere because you're trying to be somebody you're not. They have a different set of values. And if you try to live in their values, you're going to self-defeat. You'll have futility. But if you live in your own values, you won't. You'll excel because you're disciplined. Look how disciplined you are in studying and working on personal development. And then I asked him, I said, and then you have the fear of not making money at it or losing money at it. And then you have the fear of you'll lose loved ones or they won't get the respect of loved ones if you take that path. And then you have the fear of being rejected or not accepted by a group of people in society that you put on a pedestal. And then you have a fear of I'm too old. Do I have the energy and the vitality to pull it off? Although when you're doing what you really love to do, your energy soars. Or you think, well, what will I do if I break the morals and ethics of some spiritual authority I was indoctrinated by in my childhood? So those are the things that cloud the clarity of what they know, but deep inside everyone knows, and it constantly is an expression of what they value most. That's why I go through on my website to do the value determination process to help them start by looking at what their life demonstrates that they spontaneously love doing and give themselves permission to start prioritizing their life in that direction and letting it unfold.
Let's talk about values, because when I talk to people about values, a lot of people think or say something like, oh, integrity is one of my values, or I don't know, some social norm is a value. And going back, I say, no, what is your actual value that is very different to everybody else? We all have our intrinsic set of values. Can you explain your definition of values, John?
Yes. Values are things that are important to us, things we want to import into our fulfillment in life. The word important means to import into that which is empty to bring fulfillment. We fulfill our values. So, yeah, it's the ideals that we go by are those that are injected from mothers, fathers, preachers, teachers, conventions, traditions, and mores. But that's not what it's about, because many people, you ask them, they'll say integrity, like you say. But how do they fill their space with that? How do they spend their time on that? It's vague, it's general, it's an abstract thing. I want to know what their life demonstrates. I teach every day. I've done 73 presentations this year already, 73 seminars. And I don't think we've had but 75 days or 76 days or something. So I teach every single day of my life. And I do podcasts almost every day, and I do webinars every day. So I'm I'm teaching. My highest value is that. There's no question in my mind. That's what I love doing. So look at what your life demonstrates. What do you fill your space with? What do you spend your time with the most? What is it that energizes you? Where is it all your money going towards? What is it where you're most organized and ordered and disciplined and reliable? And what is it that you think about and visualize and affirm to yourself about how you want your life to be that actually is showing true and coming true? What do you want to converse with other people about most? What inspires you and brings authentic tears to your eyes? What is it that's the most consistent, persistent goals that are being achieved? And what is it you can't wait to study and learn and want to fill your mind with? You'll look and there's a pattern there, and it's really obvious if you look carefully. And that's the direction. And the key is to structure a life and to prioritize a life where you incrementally move in the direction of what's highest in priority every day. Because whenever you're living by your highest priorities, your self-worth goes up. Anytime you live by lower priorities, your self-worth goes down. So giving yourself permission to pursue what's priority and dedicate to priority, highest priority, and delegate lower priorities is the key to a self-actualized, purposeful life.
And you made me, or I saw what my values were. And at first, I actually didn't like them. And I remember you saying to, one of my big things is I like to look good. And I just said, look, most women like to look good, don't they? And the more questions you ask me, it's like, no, but that's actually a key value of mine. I go to the gym without question. I don't need motivation to do it. I love doing it. A day does not go past without me going. I spend time putting my makeup on, and I just felt this all sounded superficial. And I didn't think there was anything that I could do around that. Another area of mine, funnily enough, is wealth building. And yet again, I thought that was, well, it's money. Isn't money, we don't want to talk about money, it's not the greatest thing. But I actually love building my
Building
own
wealth.
wealth. Yes. And the other was mindset. And so I've started my podcast on these three areas, which is health, wealth, and mindset. And my big thing now is empowering people to take charge of those areas, because once you feel empowered by those areas, then nobody else can dictate their own norms into your own values.
Can I share? Can I share
Yeah,
a funny
please.
story? I was dating a girl about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, who really was quite extraordinary businesswoman. In fact, she was, I believe, nominated by Oxford University as the #1 entrepreneur in the Southern Hemisphere. Really, she went out and built a nuclear power plant when she was in her 30s, privately. Borrowed billions of dollars. It was amazing, this girl. And she built a train manufacturing company, everything else. And I was one day there with her when she had a big board meeting, was doing a sales presentation. And they had Chinese and Russian and French and South African and a bunch of countries in trying to buy a portion of her company. And it was really quite interesting because she's really a very powerful businesswoman, but she's very attractive and very beautiful and dresses nice and buys nice clothes and has her makeup, that thing. So she came into this business meeting, and they had given her, somebody was going to buy, we came in with a proposal. And she came in and she had a black night dress on, got her pumps up, got her, she was decked out like she was getting ready to go on a massive date, and because she knew she would intimidate the guys who are going to be vulnerable to that, right? So she comes into this meeting, she has this folder, and she looks at everybody one by one, and she said, well, boys, if you're going to do business with me, you're going to have to step up and become real men. This proposal is child's play. And she walked out and she swung her hips and showed off what she had, walked out. And it was about another $1.5 billion thing came on the table after that meeting. They offered.
Wow.
So I always say that don't throw away if you got it. Use what you got. Take advantage of it. So she had business savvy. She's brilliant. She had four degrees. Very brilliant girl, but also had worked out every single day and made sure she was looking good, put herself together, and used all of her powers, her intellectual power, her physical power, her sensual power, her business savvy power, her financial power. She used all of her powers, and that's what made her even more attractive. So don't negate any of your powers. There's nothing wrong with empowering yourself financially or socially or in any area of life. Nothing's too good or bad. Everybody's needed in the world, and all those powers. To me, when you're looking for a mate, if I've asked thousands of women here if they're looking for a mate, they're looking for somebody that's fit, right? That's handsome. If you had a baby with that, you wouldn't go, oh, I wouldn't want to look at that baby. They're looking for fit and attractive. They're looking for somebody that's ambitious. They're looking for somebody that's intelligent. They're looking for somebody that has resources. They're looking for somebody that really wants to be with them and feels they're special. They're looking for somebody that's got social savvy, and they're looking for somebody who's inspired by something. That's empowerment in all areas. You want that. So there's nothing to be ashamed of by empowering the 7 areas of your life.
I love that. And that sort of, takes me back to my city days, because I worked in a very male dominated industry for 17 years. And I always thought it was to my detriment, the fact that I was a woman and looked the way I did, because quite often I was in the boardroom with stiff men in sort of three-piece suits. But I realized very quickly it was actually to my advantage that I did. And as soon as you realize that and you own it, that's when you can really empower yourself. So yeah,
Yeah, take advantage of whatever you got. If I thought I could, dress up and look attractive and use that power, I would.
John, let's talk a little bit about finances, because a lot of people that I know want to be financially free. And I know you have a lot of people that you must hear in your talks and your seminars that say, look, if money was no object, I'd be able to do this business, do that, do whatever. Why is financial freedom maybe so difficult for a lot of people? Is everyone capable of financial freedom? And I don't mean that in a derogatory way at all.
I believe that most people have the capacity to do that. The thing is, they don't have the hierarchy of values to do it. They're right now they see the rich and famous living these fancy lives, and they're interested in the fancy lifestyle instead of the boring accumulation of money in their minds. So they don't know how to defer gratification. They're more interested in immediate gratification. I was in South Africa in 2012 speaking at the Success Summit, and I was the opening speaker. Richard Branson was the final speaker. I was the opening speaker. They had a bunch of people in between. And I asked people, how many of you want to be financially independent? Every hand went up. Some people had 2 hands. Some people put their legs in the air. And I said, that's interesting. Can you see that 99.9% of this room out of 5,000 people want to be financially independent? They think. I said, how many of you are? All the hands went down but 7. And I explained that financial independence was your passive income exceeds your active income. You're working because you love to, not because you have to. And all of a sudden they got quiet. And I said, isn't it interesting that everybody says they want to be financially independent, but I can tell you right now, that's not true. That's a lie you give yourself. Because if you really did, you would be. What you really want is immediate gratification to buy things that consume, that go down in value. And you want the lifestyle of the rich and famous, so you can think that that makes you feel more empowered because you think through other people's brands, you're more important. So the reality is, if you really want to be financially independent, you need to defer gratification and buy assets that go up. And so I said to him, here's how I'm going to prove it to you. Take a piece of paper. I'm going to give you 60 seconds to write the 10 things you were to do, you're going to do. If I give you 10 million US dollars right now, 10 million US dollars, and I want you to imagine I've just stick 10 million US dollars in front of you. It's now yours. You get 60 seconds to write down what you're going to do with that $10 million in 60 seconds. 10 things you're going to do with it. I said, on your mark, get set, go. And they write as fast as they can. At the end of 60 seconds, I said, now pass it to the person on your left. I said, now calculate how much of the $10 million is still an asset that's usable to invest. 20 to 80% of that money was already spent on consumables that depreciate in value in that room. There was hardly anybody in that room that took that money and stuck it into assets to live off the interest or let it compound or only live on dividends or only rental property. Nobody bought assets by themselves hardly. Everybody spent, I got that new car, I get that new house, I get that fancy clothes, I get on that trip finally, I get that boat. It was all about lifestyle. And people that have a higher value on buying things that have a lifestyle and that go down in value in consumables more so than appreciables will not have financial independence. It's that simple, because their hierarchy of values is towards things instead of actually going wealth and building wealth.
What questions should we be asking ourselves then to sort of reverse that, or to get ourselves thinking along those lines of mastering our own finances?
Well, every decision you make is based on what you believe will give you the greatest advantage or disadvantage uh, to what your hierarchy of values currently is. The hierarchy of your values dictates your financial destiny. If you have a low value on financial independence, you're not going to be. I've done surveys on people. I've talked to about 130 billionaires. I've talked to people all the way into impoverished. If you don't have it in the top four, it's not going to happen. It's just that you just basically face the truth about it. If
And
it's not high enough on your values to actually save and invest and buy assets, the higher wealth building is on your values, the more you buy assets, the lower it is, the more you buy liabilities and consumables.
and this isn't about money, because I've done this myself, because it's not, I'm not a materialistic person necessarily. I've got a high value on wealth building, but it's wealth building. It's not money for money's sake, if that makes sense.
Yes,
I
I
don't
understand.
I don't
I,
even see the money. I don't have money in my wallet, that's for
yeah,
sure.
I'm the same way. I have way more money than I'm going to spend. That's it. Exactly.
And I don't have a fancy car. I don't. I don't even drive. But it's just it's a mindset of building wealth. I don't know if that's.
Totally understand. I haven't driven a car in 33 years. I have people that do that. Exactly. So, so yeah, the thing is, if you don't have more advantage in your perceptions of the action steps that are proven to build wealth, then you're not going to. I found six things common to the wealthiest billionaires that I've interacted with. I found six things that were common to all of them. And I asked people, how many of it, pick a name, any billionaire, and they pick a name, Richard Branson or Warren Buffett or something like that. I said, one thing that's common to them, they built a business that served ever greater numbers of people. And they created a business that was in sustainable fair exchange with serving people. They had a service focus. And then they go, if you don't have some desire to want to make a contribution that's a sustainable fair exchange in a more efficient, effective manner than somebody else, then you live in a pipe dream, a fantasy that you're going to get money coming into your life. It takes service, provide some sort of means to serve. The second thing I found is that they were dedicated to managing the business effectively and efficiently, either directly themselves or indirectly by hiring great teams to make sure that they maximized the margins so they could hire the best people and keep it at the lowest prices. And that was something that they were targeting and committed to doing. It wasn't immediate gratification. It was building a lasting relationship dynamic with those people that they serve, and to make sure that included the staff and the shareholders. The third thing is that they saved an ever progressive portion of the profits. They didn't wait to see if there was profits. They took profits and put it into a cash reserve to stabilize any volatilities of the business so it was predictable and stable. Because whenever you have predictability and stability, you get more money to manage. The fourth one is that they invested in ever greater degrees of leverage. They didn't put all their money back into just one company, which is risky. They diversified it out enough places that were supplemental to the company and put it into asset accumulation. So they had a passive income in addition to their active business income. And then they had number five is that they had a desire to accumulate and to build a reserve so that they knew that the greater the reserve they have, the greater the money that they attract. Warren Buffett has $160 billion in cash reserves. Not money in the sense of greenbacks, but in cash reserves available to add to any time he sees a great opportunity. And the last one is that they created a financial cause that leaves a legacy. They had some cause that drove them that was more meaningful than just their survival, more meaningful than their family or the community or their city. They went on to a bigger cause. And the greater the cause, the greater the financial resources comes into their life. Those were six things. So if an individual writes down the benefits of having those six things in their life and doing that until the benefits exceed the benefits they get from immediate gratification, they'll shift their behavior and start investing in asset accumulation for the long-term haul to build a business that serves. But if they're interested in narcissistic immediate gratification, they're not likely to build wealth because they're going to be too focused on spending more money than they make and trying to please the Joneses and not caring about serving people.
Do you think do you think it's got harder for the younger generation today with everything that we're going through? It's very much, well, it's harder for them to get on the property ladder. We've got all sorts of things going on in the world at the moment. There is, and I'd love to get your view on this, the rise of AI and where that is taking us. What are your views around that and the sort of the future of humanity?
Well, I personally don't think there's any outside excuse stopping people from caring. When I speak at some place, I said, if you're poor, it's because you're not caring about humanity. If you care about humanity, you will find efficient, effective ways, whether it includes AI or real people, to serve their needs. And if you're targeting on that, you're going to end up with income because you're going to meet people's needs and you're going to constantly think of how can I do it more effectively and efficiently to meet needs. And wealth is always available to anybody that's willing to do that. There's no lack of money because there's no lack of ability to serve. And so if you go and focus on that and then use technologies as they emerge that can help on that, then you'll use the cutting edge technologies to your advantage. But nothing has to stop somebody from being fortunate in life. Nothing. And anytime people say, well, this is stopping me or that's stopping, nothing on the outside is ever the thing. Those are false causalities and false attribution biases that people come up with when they don't have the value structure and the commitment to something that inspires them, that serves.
Just on that, because there are different opinions on AI. Obviously, on one side, it's amazing technology that could change the way that humanity and help us in various different areas. And another area, and another side, people are frightened that we've caused potentially the end of humanity. What are your views, or is it somewhere in the middle?
Well, I have a feeling we're going to probably do both. Almost every technology we've had, there was doomsday and gloom and doom and boom and zoom. And you always have subjectively biased interpretations that make you think it's the end of the world or it's the beginning of the new age. The euphorias, utopias, dystopias. I don't pay attention to anything that doesn't see both sides simultaneously. So I think that AI is going to be here, we're going to be here, and we're going to keep working together, and we're going to go towards our objectives. It's a technology we'll use for our advantage. Will we be challenged by it? Will it outwit us? Yes. And we'll use that to our advantage because we can delegate certain things to our objectives also. So we're going to have check and counter check balance, just like we have crime and counterbalancing crime systems that keep going. The criminals get more efficient as we get new technologies. We come up with new technologies that they get more efficient. We constantly are going in a check and counter check balancing mechanism going on. And AI will be, I'm sure, that way, unless we feel that it's more efficient to have AI. If we can make a more perfect body that's more fulfilling and more things like that with an AI group, well, finally, it'll probably outdo this physical body. I can't say that won't happen in the future, but most likely we'll be using these two things going on. I don't think we've got the end of the human race by a long shot. Not in my time for sure. I don't think that's real. But in the future, AI is going to be here. It's going to be more efficient. We're going to use it to our advantage, and it's going to use us for their advantage, I'm sure.
I guess coming back then round to the question that I asked you at the beginning, which is sort of why are we here? And does the sort of the soul live on? Does it live on in our physical bodies or in another?
Well, we have seven facets to immortality. We have ideas that can live beyond our life that leave a legacy. My objective was to create. I wrote a book called The Secrets of Immortality many years ago, 40 years ago, and basically I said, there's 7 ways of being immortal, and I got this back from Heraclitus in the early centuries BC by the early Greek philosopher, and it basically says that you can go and create ideas that last beyond your life. There's still people out there reading Plato and Aristotle 2,335 years ago. We have ideas that can do it. So we can contribute to immortality by that. We can also, in our business, create businesses. There are some businesses that are 1,500 years old. Hotels and some places in the world that are 1,500 years old. So we could create a business model that continues to serve and create an immortality. We also have the capacity to create philanthropic shifts, multi-generational philanthropics, and create a Nobel Prize that has $350 million that keeps pumping out Nobel Prizes that contribute and create a legacy in perpetuity and have a legacy and immortality. Then we can also have family lineages The genetic code can go on, but we have to make sure we educate our kids to make sure that they go out and procreate. Because sometimes now people aren't having children, right? There's a value to having
They're not
children.
having sex anymore, apparently.
Yeah, well, that's that when you're 90, that makes sense maybe, but not when you're in your 30s. But procreating is going to be a very important thing in the future, or artificial insemination, or artificial potting, or whatever it may be. But somehow we need to procreate because economically we need that. Then there's social. You can, as Seneca said, you measure an individual by their most distant ends. And how impactful is that person on society to make a difference? I mean, we still have people that have left their marks that have been around for 2,000, 4,000 years, that leave monuments and things on the planet that people identify with and go and visit and their heritages. And then we have a body that we want to live forever. Now, I don't know about me. I'm 5,000 years old. I'm starting to age a bit, but I'm 70 this year. So I'm still vital and energized and still going. And most people
You
don't think
look,
that it,
you look amazing for 70.
I know.
What is your
I,
secret? Come
I
on now.
know.
What is
Well,
your
I hang myself down upside down every single day and, get the blood into my brain, right? But the thing is we have a desire for our physical immortality, and we can. And there's monuments for people. I was in a place in Rio or somewhere. I'm not sure what it was, Brazil or someplace recently, and I saw this amazing mortuary or whatever with all these amazing cemeteries and plots and things that have been there for God 1,000 years, 2,000 years. And then you can actually go and have your spiritual message. You can have your belief system. It's a belief system that you have an eschatological soul that goes beyond your life and the afterlife. But we have a yearning for immortality, and we either do it through collective contribution or an individual contribution to make a difference. Personally, I think it's wise to do both. You can actually make a difference and leave a mark in the world and be of service to the world. Most likely 1,000 years from now, people like a Buffett will be remembered, and somebody that's made a contribution. We know some of the presidents over the last 300-400 years in America because they've made some contribution. The history of your country, there's history and there's textbooks on it. So I believe that the greater the contribution you make to the world, the more immortality you do. And the more you live by your highest values, the more the space and time horizons that you strive for continue to grow. And the magnitude of space and time in your thoughts will determine how far you're going to go in life. If you have a goal that goes beyond your life, I mean, Musk is going to Mars, right? He's going to do that beyond his life. He's going to make sure we go on in perpetuity. People that do that leave a mark. And I have no doubt that he'll be around in the memories of people on the planet 1,000 years from now.
And what happens if you've got these huge big goals, but you just don't know where to start? You dream about them, you've got them inside you, but maybe you're a bit scared, or you just don't know
They're
where.
fantasies. They're fantasies if you're not taking action on them. And you need to then go and strategically plan them and get grounded and get it broken down into small bites. You can start moving on it. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen. So I'm a firm believer in big goals, but make sure that they're chunked down and structured down and strategically planned so you have something you can take actions on and make progress on a daily basis or a weekly basis.
Okay, so it is about chunking down those goals.
Yeah, because people say, well, I had a guy I met about 35 years ago or so. He said, I want to be president. I saw him about 2 years later. I said, what action steps have you taken? Well, I haven't gotten around it yet. Okay, so it's a fantasy. I said, 8 years later, I saw him again. I said, are you president yet? Are you mayor yet? Are you governor yet? Are you doing anything? Well, I haven't gotten around to it. So we sometimes write these fantasies to make ourselves get a little dopamine fix, and then we beat ourselves up because we're not doing actions on it. And that's there to make sure we set real goals in real time frames and with real strategies to get real accomplishments.
But would you say there's any truth, and that word in itself is a bit controversial, in say The Secret, the film The Secret, and you were in The Secret, and that was all about visualization, thinking about things, and they will just happen, right?
Well, I
So
wish I could say that, but I had a lady came to me at the Breakthrough Experience. She says, Dr. Demartini, I've watched the Secret movie 20 times. I've read the book 6 times. I've got all autographs by all the people in there. I mean, I've done everything. And every day I go out to my mailbox and I still don't have $1 million check. What am I doing wrong? And I slapped her. I went, you idiot. Come on, wake up. I mean, why don't you consider trying to serve somebody worth $1 million worth of service? In fact, with an overhead of maybe 30 to 50%, why not try to go and do $3 million worth of service so you can end up with $1 million? And after taxes, try $6 million worth of service to end up with $1 million in your pocket. Then you'll get there because you have a higher probability of doing it that way than just fantasizing. I'm all for visualizing. I'm all for affirming. I'm all for thinking. I'm all for feeling. I'm all for that. But I'm also interested in strategies and actions that will get you that, and then visualize yourself doing those. Not visualizing just the outcome, but visualizing the outcome and the actions. You have a higher probability of that, and you want probability in your favor, not against you.
And that's, I guess, the key bit that they miss out there is really taking the actions to this.
Yeah. I don't know about anybody. I mean, I measured my ass, the size of my ass, and it's not that big. I got a kind of a tiny little butt. And people say, well, what happened to it? I said, I worked my ass off. If you work your ass off, and ass means awakened spiritual servants, it's an acronym. If you work your butt off, that's what I find in people who have high achievement. I don't find somebody just sitting around just visualizing and not doing the action. I mean, Phelps got 28 medals and he visualized, but he also went out and swim every single day. And he put the hours in, he put the effort in, he worked out and strengthened his muscles and he strategized. He did all kind of stuff and he got 28 medals, but it wasn't because he only visualized.
But doing the work and the area that you love doing is I guess the
That's
key.
it. I had a guy that came onto the ship I live on, and he was a concert pianist. When he was 3, he started playing piano. When he was 9, he was doing concert piano performances around the world. 6 years. He's now 80. Well, he's 81 now, but he was 80 when I met him last year. And I went to lunch and dinner with him, and I said, just out of curiosity, when did you do it? And he told me the whole story. And I said, what's the average number of hours per day that you practiced? And I was expecting 2 to 5, 6, 3, something like that. He said 13. I said, every day? He said, every day since I was 3. He says, I know 8,000 classical pieces of music by heart. I don't ever have to look at music. I know it by heart. I can perform it spontaneously. And I go and I go through the next song. I go through the next song. I just practice over and over and over again. We have 4 grand pianos on my ship. And he was going from one to the other. If there was noise around one, he'd go to another one. And he just practiced. And then he did his performance and everybody was in tears. You can't watch a master work without being brought to tears, because they give you permission to master your life when you see people who are authentic and inspired by what they do. It brings out of you a yearning to want to charismatically be around those people because they remind you and give you permission to be you.
John, I'm very aware of time now. Are there any final thoughts? I mean, there are so many different topics we could have covered today, but just sort of in summary to everything you've said, if there is one single thing that somebody listening should take away, and I'm hesitant with the word should, but could take away to improve what they're doing today or improve their lives today, what would it be?
Don't focus on anything but what is really, truly highest in priority. There's a law in the physics of the world that says if you don't fill your day with high priority actions that inspire you, it's going to fill up with low priority distractions that don't. If you fill it with the highest priority actions, it's going to raise your self-worth and accomplishment. If you don't, it's going to do the opposite. If you prioritize your time, the things you do in time, prioritize the people you hang out with that are going places, prioritize where you put your money and make sure it goes up in value, not down. Prioritize what you eat, make sure it gives you fuel and make sure it gives you, you're not eating to live, you're living to eat, to perform. Prioritize what you read, what you listen to, and start taking command of your life. Any area of your life you don't take command on, somebody else does. Any area of your life you don't empower, other people overpower. If you don't empower yourself intellectually, you'll be told what to think. If you don't empower yourself in business, you'll be told what to do. If you don't empower yourself in finance, you'll be told what you're worth. If you don't empower yourself in relations, you'll be do honeydews things around the house you don't want to do. If you don't empower yourself socially, you'll be told what propaganda to believe. If you don't empower yourself physically, you'll be told what drugs and organs, or drugs to take and organs to remove. If you don't empower yourself spiritually, you'll be told some dogma that's antiquated, that's Aristotelian, anthropomorphic. But if you go and prioritize your life, you will not be a victim of history. You'll be a master of destiny.
I love that, John. We're going to put the links to your breakthrough experience in the notes. There's one coming, an online one coming up in April. We've got a code there. and you're doing another, because you've just done a live in London. I'm sorry I missed it, but you're back in London in person in June. But otherwise, you're also running them online, and I believe those are 2 days. And wherever you are in the world, you will find a time zone that sort of suits you.
Thank you.
John, thank you. It's been a pleasure having you as a guest on my show. Thank you.
Thank you. I was looking
From the
forward
bottom
to
of
it.
my heart.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Great
you.
seeing you again. Thank you.
Thank you.